the famous, or maybe not so famous, Manitou Incline. Just east of Pikes Peak and above the small town of Manitou Springs sits the Manitou Incline. In less than the span of a mile, the elevation gain is nearly 2,000 feet. It's probably one of the toughest hikes I've ever done. Check back after the intro and I'll tell you how it went. Let's talk a little bit about the Manitou Incline, and let me just share a little bit of facts about it in case some of you out there aren't quite as familiar. The trail starts at about 6,500 feet and it stretches up to just under 9,000 feet. So it's about 6 times the size of the Statue of Liberty, 3 times the size of the Washington Monument, 2 times the Eiffel Tower, and just about 400 feet taller than the Empire State Building. So when I mentioned that it's only about a mile or so high, the vertical gain it's unlike anything you're ever going to experience, at least for some of us mere mortals, that is. Because for one thing, you're not only vertically challenged on parts of the trail, but you're also challenged with the altitude. So keep that in mind if that's something that you're going to do. With the trail being so close to Colorado Springs, a lot of the Olympic athletes go there to train. It's a wonderful training ground for the athletes. But it attracts over 70,000 visitors a year. And with that, there's 2,744 steps, and they're all numbered. I shouldn't say they're all numbered, but about every so high, they're numbered, in certain sequences. So you do get some perspective on the number of steps that you've traveled. What is it? It's a series of railroad ties, and these railroad ties stretch up against the mountain. So if you're driving into Manitou Springs and you're looking up at the mountain, it almost looks like a zipper that's up there on the mountain. But these railroad ties are really in fantastic condition. I was there 6 years ago, almost to the day. I was training for the Pikes Peak ascent. So that's the half marathon version of the Pikes Peak Marathon, where the half marathoners just go up the mountain. The Manitou Incline was also part of my training routine. I did it twice. Well, I'm back where I started from, at the base of the incline. Round trip, it was 4 miles, and I'll tell you what, I'm really beat. So this is starting to wind down my final tune-up for the ascent. You've probably seen a couple hikers behind me, and at the very start of the video, I was standing with a trail as a backdrop. So I'm in Creve Coeur Park, and when I was training for Pikes Peak, this was one of the places that I trained. There's a service road here, and it's about maybe 2/10 of a mile in length, and it is probably one of the steepest trails closest to me. This was my version of the Manitou Incline. Not nearly as long though. Even when I was in good shape, it was quite a test. This last time around, it was a severe test. So I'll come back a little bit later to maybe put into perspective how this third attempt went compared to the first 2. I did finish, so I want to at least put that to bed right at the start. But this is one workout that It's like being on a stair stepper on steroids. It's straight up. There is no resting whatsoever. So the morning of this third attempt, I got there about half an hour before my reservation, and just, you know, a word in advance, they do like for you to make reservations. They were letting people on as I was there, and even as many as 8 people, but don't take any chances, because you may have some of these officials there that may not be so inclined to let you on without a reservation. A couple things you need to be keep in mind: bring some form of refreshment, whether it's water or some form of electrolyte. You're going to need it, because you can expect, depending on the condition that you're in, it could be as long as maybe an hour and a half, or even as long as 4 hours. So, as I mentioned earlier, it's a mile. The incline is a mile itself, but they don't really like for you to come down on the steps, because you've got people that are going up. So there's a trail. Actually, it's the bar trail, which goes up the side of Pikes Peak, that they prefer for you to come down on. And from the very top of the incline, it's about 3 miles down. So you need to take that into consideration. I mean, the good news is you're coming down once you spend all of that energy going up. However, there's parts of Bar Trail that are kind of difficult. When I say difficult, there's roots, there's, you know, big boulders, rocks, whatever, switchbacks. So you need to keep that in mind, because it's not so easy coming down. The incline is free. However, you need to pay. You'll have to pay for parking, and depending on the time of day, parking isn't always so easy. But the other thing too is a good part of the trail is exposed, so you're out there in the sun. Now, there are parts that are shaded, and you can peel off and take a break in the shade, but make sure you put on sunscreen, because you're going to be exposed for a good part of the time. And the other thing too to keep in mind is you're going to have families that are also going up the trail, maybe some young kids. So keep that in mind as far as how you're pacing yourself, and just being careful as you're going up the mountain. So some of these families aren't going up quite as fast, so you know, you'll need to show them a little bit of courtesy and just kind of go around them, and you know, give them maybe a little bit of space. But as you're making that climb, the early portion, I'm going to say it's fairly easy. It starts out moderate. Put into perspective, this third climb in relationship to the other two, back, you know, 6 years ago, I was in much better shape. First time I went up, and I was with my daughter Rachel, and that was really fun to do the hike with her. But it took us about an hour, and there were a few stops in there. Second time around, it was about a month later, and you know, this time I knew what to expect, and I really pushed myself, and I did it 20 minutes fast, about 20 minutes faster. I did it maybe in about 42 or 43 minutes. This time around, it was a lot tougher. And again, 6 years later, I'm also coming off of 2 knee replacements. I'm not nearly in as good a shape, but it took me about 70 minutes. So I'm going to wrap this up, but first, I want to do that with the good, the bad, and the ugly. What I'm going to do this time around, I'm going to start with the ugly. Let's get the worst out of the way first. So, ugly. You know, it's intense. Again, It's straight up, almost 2,000 feet of vertical gain. So the only break is you stepping off to the side, and please do that if you're going to take a break, because there are people that decide to take a break and they take a break on the steps, and that's not really good etiquette. And if it's hot that day, that even makes it more difficult. So be careful, pace yourself, know it going into the hike that it is going to be tough, and mentally be prepared for it, because it's one thing to maybe train for it, physically be ready for it, but you also need to be mentally prepared as well. Now, know this, once you get about 2/3 of the way up, there's a false summit there, and it appears that you're almost there, and you're not. There's still another 1/3 of the way or so to go. However, if you can't make it, there's a bailout section where you can step off the incline. You can easily access bar trail, get off the trail, and make your way down. So know that if it does become too tough for you, you do have that option of bailing out early and not going to the summit. The bad. Once you get to the top, as we've discussed, you got to come down. But don't come down on the steps, as I mentioned earlier. You know, exercise that etiquette again to those around you. Let's talk about the good. Because there is some good. If you are able to it's a huge accomplishment. You know, you look down over the small town of Manitou Springs, and it's an amazing, amazing view. It is so cool once you get up there to look down, see what you've accomplished, because at one point you were staring up, looking at all of those railroad ties and those steps that you had to climb. And now you can look down with pride and know that you made it to the top. You climbed 2,744 steps higher than the Washington Monument, than the Empire State Building, and you made it. You conquered the altitude and you conquered the elevation. So, should you do it? Yes, you should. This is one of those hikes that everybody should do, as long as they're prepared for it, because the reward is the accomplishment that you've done it. It's a challenge, but it's well worth it. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Hope you've gotten a lot out of it. Please give us a like. If you've done the incline, tell me about your experience. How did you find it? Leave a comment. I'd love to hear about your adventure. And in the meantime, please hit that subscribe button, and we are grateful for you being part of this journey with us, and we'll look forward to seeing you on our next video. Bye for now.